Canada has 3 immigration detention centres. One of them is in Laval, Quebec. A person who was detained there died recently in late January. Few details have been released about what happened. Migrants in this country can be held indefinitely in what they say can feel like a no man's land where their rights are murky and there is little oversight of the very reasons for detaining them in the first place.
J'ai été détenu 3 fois au centre de détention de Laval.
Even short periods of detention are highly traumatic and detrimental to migrants' health.
People with precarious status should not be deprived of their right to liberty.
Canada is seen as a safe haven for many people fleeing violence, strife, and poverty around the world. But for the thousands of migrants who are detained every year, the reality on the ground can be a shock.
Je me nomme Konaté Mamadou. Je suis au Québec depuis le 2 février 2016. Je suis d'origine de la Côte d'Ivoire.
When Konaté arrived in Quebec, he was 33 years old. He had a 5-year plan to become a mechanic, to start a family.
Personne laisse son pays parce que ça va. Personne laisse son pays parce que ça va. Si tu es en condition normale, il y a la sécurité. Eh bien, tu vas rester. Je fuis de la guerre parce que mon pays, c'est un pays de guerre.
But things didn't go as planned for him when he arrived in Canada. So this is where Mamadou Konaté would have been held 3 times over the past 7 years that he's been in Canada. And he said that it is pretty much like a prison, that it's very regimented, that they have to be in bed by a certain time, lights off.
Tu peux être dans une cellule où vous êtes au moins 7 personnes ou 10 personnes, chacun a son lit à côté. Maintenant, les douches sont publiques. Donc, vous lavez dans les mêmes douches là-bas. C'est une prison. Il y a des gardes qui sont partout, ils sont en train de vous surveiller. Il y a des caméras sur vous.
There are several reasons border agents give for detaining migrants, the main one being that the person is a flight risk. So Border Services says there is something in their case that shows the person could not turn up for hearings to regularize their status, or that they are considered a danger to the public. But some say those decisions can often appear discretionary.
The Canada Border Services Agency has the authority to detain people, and it's the largest one of the largest law enforcement agencies we have in Canada, and the only major one that doesn't have any civilian oversight. When a person can die and we know nothing about that person, it's astonishing.
99% of my clients are detained. If you look in the immigration system in Canada, it's supposed to favor release. No? So freedom is the norm. Well, in theory, it should be the norm. Often detainees are more isolated. They have less contact with the rest of the population. It's hard on the moral. They come often from a long way to arrive to Canada. Some come from Africa and India, and they have to take planes, walk, buses, boats, and everything. And the first thing when they arrive is that they're detained.
Though scores of people have looked to Canada for sanctuary throughout history, immigration detention as we know it today in prison-like institutions is a relatively new concept. In 1996, despite the Oklahoma City bombing being a domestic terrorism act, the United States government passed 2 pieces of sweeping legislation in its wake. They included vast immigration reforms that expanded the grounds border services could use to detain and deport people. The states started to build a bunch of immigration detention centers, and it wasn't long before they appeared in Canada too. The Laval Centre opened in 1999, with a new one next door planned to open soon. The one in Toronto in 2003, and a facility in Surrey, BC opened in 2020. Migrants are often detained upon arrival or before they are set to be deported. In several cases, children are also detained. In 2018, a submission to the United Nations Human Rights Council called Canada's immigration detention system cruel, inhuman, and degrading. It pointed out that there is no legal limit to the length of detention a migrant can experience, Every time Konate was detained, he had no idea when and whether he'd get to go home.
Je lui ai posé la question, mais qu'est-ce que j'ai fait avec tout ça là, toutes ces souffrances que vous m'avez mis dedans, les détentions illégales, je n'ai aucun droit. Le problème c'est quoi? Il m'a dit, tout ce qu'il m'a pu répondre, il m'a dit c'est une question de science.
In the 7 years Konate has been in Quebec, he's worked tirelessly at sometimes dangerous odd jobs, felling trees for the province's electricity utility and in its beleaguered long-term care homes throughout the pandemic.
Tout ce que tu gagnes, c'est avocat. Ouais. Payer avocat, caution de migration, toutes ces années, c'est dans ça que tout ce que j'ai comme ça, c'est parti. Même bon vêtement, tu ne peux pas acheter.
Some say it doesn't have to be this way. At the beginning of the pandemic, few migrants were detained because the federal government was worried about COVID spreading in the institutions. Advocates say that shows there are viable alternatives to locking people up. Just recently, BC announced it would be reviewing its immigration detention agreements with the federal government after Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International published a scathing report into the treatment of detainees.
Souvent, je suis découragé, mais si je regarde mon entourage avec des amis, avec ce que j'ai tellement de monde d'amis, donc ça fait que je ne peux jamais me décourager. Même si je me décourage, au bout de quelques minutes, là, mes amis disent hey, tu n'es pas seul là, tu n'es pas seul.
Est-ce que c'est pour ça que c'est important pour toi de nous parler à nous?
C'est ça qui me donne courage. Nous qui avons souffert, on laisse le message pour que les choses changent avant que ce qui va arriver demain.
Tu n'as rien à perdre.
Je n'ai rien à perdre là. Je n'ai rien à perdre. Où ils vont m'amener, c'est ça, des détentions. J'ai une chambre là-bas, donc je n'ai plus rien à perdre là.